can be really hard, and you're making a lot of sacrifices to, you're getting up early to write or do art. You're going to bed late to do it. You're putting your heart and soul into something, putting it out into the world, and people might love it, people might hate it, people might not even care it exists.
I think that's the ultimate test when it comes down to being a creator. Like, are you still going to do it in a dark, cold room with no one watching? And if the answer is yes, then you're probably doing the thing that you should be doing.
Right.
Hello, sir.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good. It's working.
It's working indeed. It's good to be talking to you. We've been communicating for the last maybe the last month or so now.
Yeah, probably about that. I think. Actually, I think before Lux went live, I think, or maybe right about the time. Yeah.
Well, I saw it and it looked a bit like my project Rid of You by the like at a glance, and I was like, "Who's this dude? What's he doing?" So, so this is Eastin DeVerna. Is that how I'm saying it?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Eastin DeVerna. Yeah.
And Eastin is a creator and writer based in, is it Long Island?
I was from Long Island originally. I'm in North Carolina now.
Yeah. Okay. We're testing my American geography now. I'll assume that's really far away.
They're pretty far, but that's okay. I probably would do no better. Where are you? You're in the UK?
Actually, just outside of London, actually. So,
okay.
It's not quite as big an area, but there are probably as many places to remember or something like that. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, like I say, well, thanks for hopping on with me.
Thanks for having me.
I think it'd be really cool maybe to, it's always nice for someone to kind of give an overview of kind of who they are and what they do. So I will hand it over to you to do a cool intro for yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, first of all. My name is Eastin DeVerna, and I'm a writer. I write a bunch of different in a bunch of different genres and mediums, I guess. I do comics or graphic novels. I do novels, short stories, some poetry, and I have done a little bit of a blend in the past too. What are called I guess illustrated novels, where it's largely prose, but then some pages are sequential art, comics, and some splash pages and illustrations, spot illustrations here and there. So yeah, I do a little bit of everything in the writing world. I've been writing, I guess, professionally, self-published and published probably for about 8 years now. And yeah, I have a Kickstarter going right now, which I think is how we met, like you said. Yeah.
For sure. No, it's very, I'm a fan of anything that visually catches my attention, and this for sure did. So yeah, no, it looks really, really good. So you've been writing for maybe 8 years or so, you said, and it's a mixture of publishing work and kind of crowdfunding, Kickstarter work. This isn't really on my kind of like list of things to ask, but just out of interest while we're here, which one, if there was one to prefer, which one might that be?
Well, they each have their pros and cons. I think I would prefer self-publishing and working through crowdfunding, and I think that's why I'm doing Lux, and that's why a number of my previous and probably my projects that are coming out in the near future will probably be through Kickstarter crowdfunding as well. I like the fact that it is on your time and your schedule. There are less hoops to jump through. You don't really need to query agents, wait for representation if you don't already have that. You don't need to then hope that your pitch will get picked up by a bigger publisher, and if that's the case, and that could take however long. This kind of puts you in the driver's seat, and the other reason why I like to do this, at least to start, is because it kind of at first it cuts out the middleman when it comes to making money. It's really only you, the people who are supporting the book, and then the middleman in this case would be Kickstarter or whatever crowdfunding platform you use, as opposed to a lot of different hands in the pot kind of thing. And the other thing is that Kickstarter crowdfunding can be just that, and it can help you get your idea made. It can build a little fan base around it. And once you get the initial product out there and into the world, you then have the option to either keep it that way and sell it on your own, or then you can pitch around a finished product, almost like it's almost like a business card that you can go show a publisher or an agent or something and say, hey, look, I already have an audience. I have something successful. This is what it looks like. Maybe we can start talking about getting this onto a a level of broader distribution kind of thing.
That's a good answer. So, I mean, I guess in a way, kind of, I've got this light that's going to keep going off and on. Sorry.
And no problem.
All right, maybe it just has gone off. So, in terms of Kickstarter, I guess it's kind of a good. Are we saying it's kind of a good platform to launch an initial product to then maybe take further forward? Is that, does that sound about right?
Absolutely. But the way, that may be what it was originally, but also the way it is now, especially in the comics space, I'm noticing, since COVID, a lot of sort of the smaller indie publishers have struggled quite a bit. And understandably, cons shut down. That was a big revenue stream for a lot of them. It just became harder and harder to get the books out there on the shelves and to build an audience.
Yeah.
And so a lot of creators since kind of went to Kickstarter and sort of are becoming like their own publisher, their own sort of brand. And I've seen a number of people become very successful at doing this, running multiple campaigns one after the next, and as long as you're fulfilling your rewards and you're being transparent with your backers, that the book will be coming out. And if there's a delay, be open, be honest about it. You kind of can act as your own publisher. I mean, it's a lot of work for sure. Speaking from experience and from a lot of people I know who've done it. But again, like I said, you're in control. It's on your timeline. You don't have to answer to anyone else. You have full creative freedom around the project, and you do build your own audience, which is really cool. And you connect with them on a way that you wouldn't necessarily working with a larger publisher, where you don't really. Like today, I spent some time this morning just answering emails and some messages from backers who had questions about the book, and that's really cool, because like you get to directly speak to someone who loves your idea enough that they want to contribute to your idea because it's not a reality yet, and they want to see it brought to life. So I always found that to be really rewarding about Kickstarter. So yeah, you can kind of the way it's going now. I'm seeing more creators go towards that direction of becoming your own brand, your own publisher sort of thing, because the audience is there on Kickstarter. It really is. And as long as, like I said, you're putting out quality work, you're being transparent with your backers, and you're doing what you say you're going to do, it's going to take work, but you can find success doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think you're absolutely right. I've seen a shift with creators kind of going to crowdfunding platforms.
Yeah.
Not just necessarily Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually seen, funnily enough, more crowdfunding platforms popping up, which is super interesting, which I guess, speaks to the demand of crowdfunding as a way to not just fund a project for the creator, but also for the people interested in new projects or to consume different kind of stories straight from the creator to actually find them, which is super cool.
And what's been happening too recently is larger publishers, and I know for sure some in comics like Boom Studios or Image Comics have been putting out books or omnibus collections through Kickstarter. These are publishers who typically would have acted in the traditional sense, where they would pay an advance or a page rate to a creative team, fund the printing, everything on their own. But now they're going directly to the crowdfunding model, which is an established publisher doing this. And then you see big name authors like Brandon Sanderson, one of the biggest names in fantasy, did a Kickstarter a year or two ago, millions of dollars made, and just recently switched to one of the newer crowdfunding platforms, which I think was BackerKit, and again, it's like something like 20 million plus or something. And so that's him, this established author, not using a traditional publishing route anymore, but going directly to the audience. Again, cutting out that middleman kind of thing. So you're seeing it all over the place. Like crowdfunding is not just a means of someone who can't go the traditional route anymore. It's people are going that route because they are choosing to for a number of different reasons.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it was always the case that and I've worked with a lot of big book publishers, and I love working with them. So what I'm
Hmm.
about to say is just objective.
Sure.
But it used to be very much that you go to a book publisher, they pay in advance, they very much held the keys, so to speak, of
Right.
publishing a novel or whatever it might be. And now that's not necessarily the case, and creators can go directly to their audiences.
Hmm.
But in a way, it's as advantageous as it is troublesome, because now what we've got is the publishers and the creators becoming competitors, not
Hmm.
necessarily collaborators all
Right.
the time, which again is
Yeah.
really interesting. I mean, I don't know how that will play out in the long run. It's just an interesting observation. And ultimately, I think the infrastructure of super, super large book and comic publishers will never go away. I think there is something about walking into a bookstore and picking a book off the shelf, and in a weird way kind of smelling that paper smell that you have in a bookshop,
Hmm.
and it's quite magical in itself.
Yeah.
But maybe
Yeah.
that's reserved for super large projects. I don't know how it will play. I'm no expert, but it's just
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. I think there are still ways as well. After you fund a book, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's not already a model that there will be ways for someone who doesn't have a publisher working behind them. Um, uh, yeah, someone just wrote, big publishers doing crowdfunding also cuts retailers out of the picture entirely. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting aspect of it too. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if eventually there's a route, or if there's already something in place for an individual creator to get their books distributed through something like Simon and Schuster, or so that you can get into the Barnes and Noble, or I mean, Amazon. Anyone can put a book up there, and
Yeah.
that's probably one of the biggest booksellers, or if not the biggest bookseller,
Oh yeah,
right? Um,
it's the biggest.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and you know what's cool too, though, is like I have a stack of books from all my previous campaigns and books that I published in the basement, and it's just fun to also go to a local bookstore and say, hey, I'm a writer. Here are some books that I've worked on. Could we do a signing one night? Or if you have like a local author, or if you're just interested in putting them on your shelves, let's chat. And I've done that with a number of local bookstores. Which is always really cool. It's neat to meet people that way as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And coming back to was it the retailers that are being cut out? Someone said.
Uh, yeah. I think that's what they said. Yeah, when big publishers like Boom or Image or whatever, if they're going directly through to Kickstarter, they're sending. I guess they're sending directly to the backers. They're not using diamond distribution um, or I don't know. I don't know if these books. I haven't personally backed too many of these, but I don't know if any of them are winding up in comic shops, which would be interesting. And I'd be curious to hear a local comic shop's
Yeah.
perspective on that, how they feel about this kind of thing.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
actually, sorry, a bit of a cough. I actually saw an article. Oh, my voice has gone weird. About the potential for someone like Diamond Distribution, who operate in comics,
Hmm.
essentially uh, distributing crowd-funded books and comics to stores, which would be super interesting as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
That would be cool. I always thought it would be neat for a platform like Kickstarter or BackerKit or whatever to sort of create their own online bookstore after these books are funded. Like if you had the choice to say, a lot, I don't know, however X amount of books to their sort of online store, and then it's sort of like a backlog or library that someone who maybe missed a campaign can go and buy directly through there. So everything is all in one place kind of thing. I don't know if anything like that will ever happen, but I always thought that might be kind of cool.
You
Um,
had a thing. So I think which is the platform? I think Indiegogo does this already, about
I'll do
kind of like
that.
post-campaign kind of.
Hmm.
I don't know. You can still buy the book, and some kind of. I don't know if it's like a project extension, or forgive my. I'm new to the crowdfunding space. I'll be launching
Yeah,
my first one soon, but
yeah,
I guess I'll learn as I
yeah,
go. But I think Kickstarter's doing the same thing, so that's quite interesting as well. But
yeah. I
yeah,
did.
I mean,
Yeah.
moving on to kind of like, I guess, sorry, we could talk about crowdfunding for a long time, I'm
Yeah,
sure. But
there's a lot to talk
I'm
about in
really
that. Yeah.
interested to learn about your. I, I don't quite want to pitch it as a passion for fantasy, but obviously you've picked for your next project, Lux, kind of a fantasy romance, would you say, kind of
Yeah,
genre?
yeah. Yeah, I'm calling it a romantic fantasy. It's certainly primarily fantasy, but it does have a heavy romance subplot in it as well, between the two main characters, Lux and Cygnus.
Okay. And what was your
Yeah.
inspiration? Like, why did you pick this story to tell?
So I started this story like 10 years ago. I was coming out of my MFA in creative writing and literature, and I started just writing it for my wife, like to try and be romantic kind of thing. Like here's the story for you. It's kind of like, the characters are kind of a little bit like us kind of thing. Um, and and what I started originally back then is very different from uh, what it is today. It was influenced by, stories like, and this is on my Kickstarter page, like, Legend of Zelda, like the Twilight Princess, Sleeping Beauty, old fairy tales like from the Brothers Grimm, all that sort of stuff in that fantasy realm. But I sort of wrote it in like these little vignettes that were almost like Brothers Grimm-esque stories, very short chapters, each detailing like that. But then it started evolving a little bit into a more contemporary prose style, and and I've just been working on it slowly over the years. And I would always give chapters to my wife, as I completed them, kind of thing, and she would read them, and we talk about it, and it's just kind of like something between us. Um, but recently, a couple of years ago, I probably printed out like 75,000 words and gave it to her for Christmas one year. And I was like, "Hey, look, this is Lux. I told you I was still working on it." And she got to reading it, and she was like, "This is like a full-on like novel that's really good. Why don't you try and get this out to a broader audience at this point?" And I was like, uh, I love that idea. But throughout that time that I've been working on this, I was working on a ton of other stories, Samurai Grandpa and A Guardian, The Runner, a couple novels and graphic novels and things like that. And then it finally got to the point where I was like, okay, yeah, I think Lux is ready to try and put out into the world. And I just finished doing a couple other Kickstarters, and that was really how I felt comfortable. And I wanted to do this, because this has been a very personal project. I really wanted to do it my way, kind of thing, first at least. And so that's why I went the Kickstarter route.
That's kind of sweet. That's kind of a nice story, I guess. So you started writing the story, and it was almost it's a story within itself, and it's almost like with your not your wife's approval as such, but with her kind of like you wrote it for her, and she went, "Yeah, this is ready," kind of thing, and then
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. There's something kind of nice to that. Okay, that's quite cool. And so I mean, how much of it do you think is you know it's always someone that's been on a not as long a writing journey as yourself. It'd be interesting to learn like how much of this story would you say is kind of like you, and how much of it is kind of like I guess drawn from other elements of life and things like that. I mean, how does that normally work for you?
Um, do you mean like how much by other elements of life? Do you mean like other inspirations, or do you mean like from like real life
Yeah, how
scenarios
much
that
of
I
it's
might sort
drawn
of write
from
into? Kind of thing?
yeah, how much is drawn from your real life experience, say,
Mhm.
or elements of your life?
Um, well, not a ton because it has like dragons and alchemists and angels and
Yeah,
and princesses
historically, those things
and
can exist, I
yeah,
guess. I don't
yeah.
know.
But I will say, as far as like the romance element goes, and really, what I always try to do is, regardless of what genre I'm writing, and I always, I just want to make the characters feel as real as possible. So whether it's this angel who's like the last of the seraphim, or this princess of light who woke up for the first time to a completely dark kingdom that's under threat of this dark dragon. I want them to be somewhat real and relatable to whoever's reading it. There are these fantastical stories and elements and characters, but if there's nothing within them that makes them human for a reader to anchor themselves onto, I feel like I failed as a writer. And so like as far as like the relationship aspect goes, and the way I did start writing it was like, it's a romance, but romance in real life or relationships, whatever you want to call it, they're very winding and meandering usually, right? At least I think for a lot of people they are. And for me and my wife, we met young when we were in college, and I fell for her. She kind of played hard to get for a while, and we kind of like did like these, like we each went our own ways. I did a lot of traveling. I was working. She did her own thing throughout college, and then we always stayed in each other's lives. We would come to touch points, and we'd go our own ways again, and then eventually we ended up, we fell in love, started dating, and got married. But I really wanted to sort of, echo that in how do relationships build? How do people start falling for each other? How do you really start caring for other people? So there's a lot of that I drew from my personal experience and life, and with relationships with her, that I put into that. Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's really really cool. So I mean, I guess it's the dragons aside, I guess I guess it was nice to draw upon I guess what it is, the sentiment of humanity that I think people will relate to fundamentally,
yeah,
what it is to fall in love,
right.
or why people fall in love. That's quite nice.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and like you said, like even I was kind of joking around when I was talking about like the dragons and the alchemists and the bad guys and things. All of that stuff could be stand-in for real life challenges and obstacles,
yeah.
and metaphors. And anyone, people when they read a book, they're going to put their own interpretation. They're going to have their own interpretation of it. They're going to read it from their own perspective, kind of thing.
Mm.
So, but as long as again, like I feel like if there's some element of humanity to it, even if it's a fantasy book, then I think it'll succeed in that way.
Mm. Yeah, sorry about this light. Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, like one of the things that I think is really interesting, especially I didn't actually know that you did this third type of book. So you've got kind of comics in your roster, you've got kind of prose and novels, and then you've got almost like an in between, which is kind of prose with illustrations as well.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
super interesting. I mean, like I would love to know about your ex how you the differences between the creative approach between the three, if any. I'd love
Hmm.
to know about anything to do with that.
Yeah. So, um, just someone said I resemble Joshua Jackson. It's not the first time I've heard that. Uh,
Joshua Jackson, I don't know Joshua Jackson.
I really
I might.
only know him as Pacey from Dawson's Creek, like from
Oh,
that show, like way back in the day.
okay, you
But
seem pretty happy with it, so I guess it's a compliment.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so sorry. Anyway, so yeah, so like let's talk about writing comics first. Writing comics, I'll have an idea, and I've been lucky enough to work with some really talented artists who not only are drawing the book or doing the art and the coloring. They become really good friends of mine over the years, and they're true collaborators and storytellers with me. Um, uh, in the book that we're making. And so like if I have an idea, we'll use Samurai Grandpa for example. I work with Sean Daly on that one. And so typically like when I and we're working on book two now. We just recently funded part one of book two. Couple when was that? I don't know. It was my last Kickstarter. I don't remember how long ago it was, but I'll have an idea, and I'll start thinking about the story in Sean's art style, and how his characters emote, his art direction as he's laying out the pages and drawing them. Um, and so that sort of informs my writing because I'm thinking about it. I'm already seeing it in my head and how Sean will, and he does hand painted watercolors, and heavy black inks and stuff, and it's all really beautiful art. And so that sort of helps inform the story that way. And likewise on A Guardian, which is the other fantasy series that I'm working on. That's a graphic novel. I work with Kay Woolheiser, and we've worked together for two volumes of that, and a couple of other things. She's the cover artist on Lux as well.
I see.
Uh, and so, with her and with Sean, like we go back and forth. when I send them my scripts, which sometimes I might tend to overwrite, and they know me and they're comfortable saying, "Hey, Easton, we need to trim this back a little bit. Can we cut these captions?" Or, what if we do it? What if we do it this way? Because they're going to put their own ideas and storytelling sensibilities spin onto it. And so, in that way, comics are like super collaborative, where I'll send a script, never thinking that this is what I saw in my head is going to be the end result, because it never will be. Usually, in every case for me so far, the end result has been way better because they put their own stamp on it, and we've worked together to tell something, rather than just one person kind of doing it, or trying to sort of like bulldoze it in one direction. Like, it's a true collaboration, and so I really love that about comics. In the next level, I guess we can talk about the prose or the illustrated novels. That I've done about two books like that so far, and it's similar in that it's a collaboration. But um, sometimes you're doing with prose, you have the ability to sort of meander a little bit more and wander in your storytelling. Where in comics, you're much more constrained to the size of the page, literally, how many panels you can fit onto it, and depending on whether or not you're writing it for a publisher who's going to be pretty adamant about sticking to a 23 to 27 page count per issue, you have to cram, a beginning, a middle, an end, and a hook, and build your characters and build your world all into 23 pages, which can be quite challenging, and sometimes it can feel rushed. So with the illustrated novels, you have the best of both worlds in that you can spend like a page describing, the feeling you get walking into woods, the sights, you know, uh, the sounds, the smells, whatever it might be. And then, if you get to an action sequence, and the artist you're working with is going to be able to choreograph it and show it visually, probably way better than you could writing it
Mhm.
in prose. That's where you could save some of your illustrations,
Mhm.
to really pinpoint that. Or if you're gonna have like an emotional, um, poignant moment, you might want to save that for a splash page, where it's two characters hugging on top of a mountain, whatever it might be, after something like really terrible happened. And you just kind of want to see it and be present with them there. And you can do that in prose, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit different, obviously, looking at a picture than it is reading a word and trying to visualize it in your head, right?
Yeah, I think so, and that's really insightful. I mean, I've always, and as an artist and someone that is constantly visualizing things, especially
Hmm.
with comics and graphic novels. Um, I've always thought about the relationship between books and comics, and how they're similar and how they differ, and you've
Yeah.
encapsulated it really nicely. But there's a part of me that absolutely loves just the idea of taking words, visualizing them for the reader so that they can really absorb every nuance of a story, whether it's the underlying narrative and the plot, the dialogue, and then also the visual. But then there's also a part of me that sometimes, and people might not like, people might hate, I don't know, I'm going to say it. Um, is the visual robbing the reader of envisioning it for themselves? And this is where the prose and the illustrated novel kind of hits a nice middle ground for me, where you get to
Hmm.
visualize certain things, but then, like you say, meander, but allow the
Yeah.
reader
Yeah.
to kind of let their imagination come to life as well. So I'm not. I mean, they both art forms completely have their place and are completely valid. And if I had to pick, I would pick a graphic novel all day long. I just love the visual side of things. It
Hmm.
stimulates me. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, sorry. And I think the third one we were going to talk about was prose itself, and how you would approach that, I guess.
Um,
Or did you cover that?
yeah.
I don't
Sorry.
know. So.
Yeah. So for prose, um, yeah. So for that one, I like prose because, I mean, I love writing in all of them, honestly. They're all very different. I love um, the collaboration aspect. Like I said, it's a little less lonely working on a comic with someone, because you have that back and forth, uh, element. But with prose, I do also enjoy. We were talking a little bit about this yesterday, I think, when we connected, like sort of like being in that writing cave and sort of just
Yeah.
like getting into the zone or like the flow. Um, and sort of just going with it. But when it comes to writing, I'm more of a pantser, not a plotter. So I have my beginning, sort of middle, probably, and end figured out. But everything else, I don't work off of a strict outline. When I was doing my MFA, I tried to do that because some of my teachers taught us to do that. But I always found that my stories came out very stiff.
Mm.
I would really try to make all the points connect or go from A to B to C kind of thing.
It feels
And
organic at some point,
yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, totally.
exactly. You're following, there's something to be said for obviously following, the hero's journey or the structure, three-act structure or whatever you want to call it. Um, but at the same time, it can become stale and predictable if you're doing it the same way all the time, or if you are trying to force things to fit an outline. So I like the process of just going and seeing what happens, on the page. And I find that my stories come out so much better when things that I never had planned or never expected would show up in the story do show up.
Mm.
And that way too, because I feel like the writing process is kind of always happening. And when you go out to the park with your kid or whatever, you could get an idea that you never would have thought would fit into a story. And then if you're trying to adhere to a strict outline, it might not fit in there. Um, but if you're being, sort of free flowing about it, you can be like, oh yeah, I think I can totally work this in, and then sort of move the pieces around a little more fluidly. Um, so
So
yeah, so
something
for some of,
I mean, to that point, something I found
mm,
that's really useful actually, and correct me if I'm, well, let me know what you think. Um, Sometimes just approaching the writing and getting it out and retroactively, kind of, I guess, sequencing the plot. I found to have a more organic feel to the way I've always written. And when I say always written, I probably start drawing things way too early,
mm,
and then almost retroactively fit the drawings to the plot. So it's a slightly different method. I'm way more visual, so it's more storyboards. But I mean, what do you think? Did you find a similar thing?
um, yeah, well, I don't know actually.
So like retroactively. So if you approach a story in a really organic way, and then you go
Yeah.
back over your work and I guess fix things like the pacing or the sequence of scenes, for example. Did you find that you do any of
Mm.
that?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, there are certainly parts where, like I said, especially in comics, where I might fall into some more of my prose writing tendencies and drag something out or put too much narration into a caption or whatever. And then certainly, it does come to that does happen a lot in prose as well, where I'll be I sort of will get lost describing a scene or really get lost in the character's head in a moment, and that could span for pages. And while I might really enjoy it, maybe a few other people might as well, but is it really serving the story, or can I get the point across and move and keep
Yeah,
the action moving,
yeah,
kind of thing? Um, so yeah, I definitely do have to go back and do some of that. And probably pantsing does require a bit more heavy editing, at least in my experience, because like you said, I might just it all kind of goes out and then it goes in every direction, and then I kind of have to say, okay, let's bring it in and kind of get it to take shape
yeah.
a little bit better. Yeah.
And do you work with an editor that you normally do? You work with someone to help edit the work on like an objective level?
Uh, I have a very good friend of mine who's a novelist as well. So he'll read my novels and give me very honest feedback that I take to heart. And when it comes to my comics, I have worked with editors. I find that working with people that I very much know them and trust them and admire their storytelling sensibilities. Uh, like Kay or Sean or my buddy Grim, who I've worked with, we are very honest with each other as well. So we kind of act as each other's editors. If one of them will do something in the art that that I think maybe misses the point, a very important plot point. We can work through that. Or like I said, if I'm doing something in the script that maybe isn't really serving the story as best as it could, they'll be very honest with me and say, you know what, in these thumbnails, you're going to notice that I didn't put that in, and this is why. I'm like, oh yeah, good point. That looks a lot better that way. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't have like a strict editor, but I do have some very close friends who work professionally in the field that we are kind of each other's editors like that.
Oh, that's good. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
nice working with kind of peers. Whether it's me with artists or you with writers, to get that kind of critical feedback on that kind of level, that it is always nice. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions that I try and always ask people where possible.
Okay.
Take them as you will, and I'd
Okay.
love to get your honest answer. So, I mean,
Sure.
what do you think your greatest accomplishment is to date?
In the creative world.
Yeah, yeah. Just it could be a personal accomplishment. It could be I don't know. It could be anything. Just whatever comes to mind first.
That's a good question. So and it's funny because it's kind of like a moving target, having these uh, these goals when it comes to creative work. When I was in my MFA, I always thought it would be getting published. Like that was my number one thing. I was like, I want to be published. I want to have my book in a bookstore, being sold wherever. And that has happened, and that's an accomplishment. It takes time and hard work to do that. Um, but at the same, once that happened, I was kind of like, well, publishing was fine. It was good. I kind of want to try this crowdfunding thing. And honestly, I think my biggest accomplishment, and this might sound like a cop out of an answer, it's that I'm still going, because sometimes
Nice.
being a creative, um, and putting things out there and working with publishers where things don't always go right, or doing crowdfunding where things don't always go right, can be really hard. And you're making a lot of sacrifices to, you're getting up early to write or do art. You're going to bed late to do it. You're putting your heart and soul into something, putting it out into the world, and people might love it, people might hate it, people might not even care it exists. Um, so,
No one might even
so the
see it.
fact that,
No,
yeah,
absolutely.
so the
That's a
fact that you
really,
can
really
you
good
can do
one.
that and still go
Yeah.
and still do it, I think is important. Yeah.
I think that's the ultimate test when it comes down to being a creator. Like, uh, are you still going to do it in a dark, cold room with no one watching? And if the answer is
Yeah.
yes, that means it's kind of you're doing it for the right reasons. Number one, and number two, you're probably doing the thing that you should be doing.
Right.
That's a
Right.
good answer. Which leads me on to the next one. What do you think your biggest failure is?
Oh, oh, the biggest failure. Well, the one Kickstarter that I did have fail, it kind of left a little bit of a mark. um, but not in a bad way, because it was something I was telling you yesterday. It was a board game that I didn't really know going into that field, into that world of things, what I was doing. I'm happy and proud that I took the chance to do it, but it didn't quite work out. And I did learn a lot from that whole process, and it still exists, you know, behind closed doors, and I still want to get it out there eventually. But it was a board game and a graphic novel combo, so it was pretty ambitious,
That is
and yeah, yeah. And so, I had a great team that I was working with. Um, we didn't quite make it, but it's not the end of the road for it. And these slip ups or failures or blips, whatever you want to call them, I think they're really important for getting to where you want to go. It's kind of like a spiral, right? You you
yeah.
don't you don't necessarily always go like that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of those things. It's kind of like sometimes I feel like in the face of failure, to which I've had many, and I would argue that the majority of things lean slightly more towards failure than success when you're doing
hmm
so many of these creative things with so many different variables, and then of course people's subjective opinions of that.
right,
But the idea of there's kind of a lesson in every failure. It sounds so cheap to say, but there is actually so much truth in it, and there is
It's so
always,
true. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But it's kind of like as you rock yourself to sleep, cradling yourself, saying, there's a lesson in here somewhere. There really is a lesson in there somewhere.
Hmm.
So that, yeah,
Right.
again, good answer. And then my last kind of, I guess this is for people. I asked this question just to try and get your take on maybe a lesson that you learned that aspiring writers, might gain value from.
Hmm. Um, yeah. So I think it's really important uh, to if you want to tell a story, again, this is going to sound cheap, but you just have to do it. But that you can break that down a little bit, right? You can't just wake up one day and write a book. You have to, for me, and this might not work for everyone, but for me personally, I need to find a routine and every single day to find time to write or to step away from it. That's to me is just as important because if you sit there staring at your computer or your notebook all day, I think that's not a good thing. I think you need to get out and live life and experience and have conversations and just be outside. I think that's all part of the process. But I think finding a routine and just starting very small is important. Write a haiku one day, write a short story, write anything, and try. Sorry. Um, and just really try and set that in stone and keep it going because it's so easy. You can make all the excuses in the world as to why you're not going to be able to sit down and write. But if you can actually just sit down and do it, you're gonna it's like a little domino effect, and the dominoes will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the more you do it, you can sit down and write. If you get to the point where you can write one page a day, that's 365 pages in a year. You have a novel done, right? Not everyone can write one page a day, but just getting anything out there is so important. I think Neil Gaiman said something like when he was writing Coraline, he wrote it 50 words a day or something like that, or whenever in 50 word stints because he was so busy with life and whatever else. So, if there's someone like that successful who's finding time to even just squeeze in 50 words in that busy, I think anyone can. But, you do have to make sacrifices. So find out, are you going to watch that extra episode of television or are you going to sit down and just try and get some words on the page?
Yeah.
It just comes down to really being a little bit disciplined and finding routine. For me, that really works. Like I need that quiet time in the morning um, before everyone wakes up and the house is dark. That's where I can like really focus. And I know that if I don't force myself to wake up early, it's not going to get done. And I want to get it done. So it's kind of
Yeah.
figuring out what works for you, but really finding the time and forcing yourself to do it at first. It might be hard, but eventually you're going to love it. You're going to fall in love with your routine, and you're going to be like, "This is amazing." I feel good. You feel accomplished, even if you only get those 50 words down or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And I mean, so I guess to kind of like to summarize, I guess it's one of the major takeaways that I think any aspiring writer or artist could take from
Hmm.
that as a single sentiment is to break it down into
Yeah,
into bit parts and just work slowly but steadily up to the larger goal, but keep the goals small and frequent. I
yeah,
guess is
absolutely.
and it's the
And,
same.
and like you said before, though, like be prepared for those failures or slip ups. Like they're gonna happen, and don't beat yourself up over it.
Yeah,
If you want to do it, it's just part of it. Every single creative person that I've ever met or I've heard about has fallen into some sort of failure or hiccup.
yeah.
And you just keep going.
Keep taking the punches. It's like
Yeah,
there's a Rocky quote that's really really relevant here. I can't quite remember it, but there's something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Hmm.
But yeah, no, that's it from me. It's been really great to chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
When
did
you,
you want to tell everyone where they might be able to find Lux?
Yeah. So Lux right now is on Kickstarter for the next 6 days. It's coming to a close. It just funded yesterday, maybe. And we have a couple of stretch goals that we're working towards, which will be a dust jacket, um, a sticker set, some other higher stretch goals that, maybe we'll get to, maybe we won't. But
I just
as of now,
as
it's
an aside,
funded and it's
I really love how you broke down kind of the deluxe version
Oh,
of the book. I think it looks really, really good. And
awesome.
by the
Yeah.
looks of things, it's been well received as well. So do check those out. They look really slick.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So it's there. The link is in my profile here on Instagram. Or if you just Google Lux from the Kingdom of Darkness Kickstarter, it should pop up. And you have your Kickstarter coming out soon, right? When is that launching? Do you know yet?
I do. I do. First of all, so with Lux, what I'll do is I will put the link in my bio as well, just in case anyone can see it
Thank you.
there, and it will sit there. There's a nice stack of links there, so that'll be in there.
I appreciate
And
that.
then yeah, but no worries. And then my Kickstarter, I've been, it's been, all the artwork, the book's finished, ready to go. I've been kind of biding my time and waiting for the right time to launch
Okay.
it. I'm hoping that'll be sometime next month.
Okay.
So towards the end of June. So I'm, obviously a little bit, it's the first Kickstarter, so I think we're always a bit nervous about the first
Yeah.
Kickstarter, although
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if it ever
Well,
gets any easier.
uh, the jitters never go away. I think you do get used to you do learn a little bit how to build a page quicker or
Yeah.
what reward tiers might sell better than others. But I'll be there on day one for yours. And if you do want any eyes on the page or feedback, definitely just let me know. I'm happy to help and
Oh,
check
I
however I
appreciate
can.
that.
Yeah.
That's very. I will definitely take you up on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, cool. But for now, check out Lux, and yeah, it's been good to talk, and yeah, let's do it again.
All right. Thanks so much for having me.
Cheers, man. Speak soon.